going to be part 2 on how to put a stripe onto our panels. We did a video that showed how to paint stripes, and I still feel that that's the preferred way. It's the most long-lasting way. But a lot of dealers and installers at home aren't really comfortable with using paint products. So we want to show you some ways to actually do tape lines, and that can be advantageous when you're using a temporary install, or a court that's not going to get an enormous amount of commercial use. It'll work really well. A lot of the tapes that you see here are commercial grade tapes meant for the sports and striping industry. Some we've actually been experimenting with that are quite good. So I'm going to kind of show you how to go about doing some taping. Also show you on how to clean an area. That's where the alcohol comes in play. You always want to make sure your area is nice and clean before you tape. And so let me get started here. So one of the first things that I would do is, if I'm going to make an arc, like a 3-point line, I've got to have I really need a compass. And you can make this very simple. This is a piece of wood that I put a nail or a screw in one end to make the point, and then drilled a hole that would fit a pen or a Sharpie. And essentially this is a compass. So what I'm going to show here is, really you would just basically take your pen and draw a line on your panel. And there's your arc. Now you have something to go by. So this is a really simple way, once you get your template of what size basketball or hockey area you want to do, creating an arc is very important. Again, I don't want to freehand this thing. I want to make it look, this is a professional court product. It should look like a professional court when you're done. So this is an easy way to make a compass. And then what I would do at this point, I would take my alcohol, and again, this happens to be rubbing alcohol. This is fine, it's what you have. Denatured alcohol from Home Depot or Lowe's works really well. And essentially you're just going to clean the area. And you're just, because you want that tape to stick really well. So this stuff evaporates very, very quickly. That's what's good about it. It's not hard on your nose. And that's just going to make this area nice and clean. So this is to me, something that's imperative that you want to do. Now let's look at different tapes. This tape here happens to be a tape that was for marking floors, and it's a great tape. It's kind of more of a vinyl, and what's nice about it, it's sticky, and this would certainly be able to be used on a court. Comes in different colors. It's more of a vinyl, but what I like about it is that I can follow an arc with it. Now what I do, I would want to make sure that I probably put this tape indoors, or if it's summertime, get in the sun. The hotter it is going to be, the better off it's going to be. You can actually have somebody come behind you, or with a heat gun, and warm it up before you press it in. But this has been sitting in this room, so it's Florida and it's pretty warm. So essentially what I do, remember, Paul, maybe you can get in here and kind of show this line right here a little bit more. But what I do is I essentially am going to pull out a little bit more, and I'm using my hand, and I'm following this thing. I'm pulling it out and stretching a little bit. And I'm just kind of following this thing around, and I'm following this line. I'm just kind of, almost like you're doing it in a car, like you're pinstriping a car. And there you go. You got a nice arc, you got a nice line there, and you can take your cloth and you can burnish it in. And this is where you can even take a heat gun and run a heat gun over this top and make it suck down into the panel a little bit. So we can cut this free here. I feel like Martha Stewart. But then now you've got this down, and it's spanning across a couple different panels. So at that point, you're going to want to take this and you need to cut this free of these seams, because remember the panel is going to expand and contract. So you're going to rub this in, and that little piece right there I can get rid of. And essentially, by burnishing this in here and getting it pressed in there, you've now opened up the ability for this thing to expand and contract, and you freed it. So that's one way, that's one tape, and that works really well. It's probably not going to be a quote unquote permanent, but it should work really well for any events or any short-term tournaments you're doing. But again, it may work just fine, and we're going to put a link on our website on where all these things are available from. This one is quite interesting. This is something that you would not normally think to use. A couple years back, somebody sent me a vinyl graphic, which I thought it was a vinyl graphic. It turned out to be aluminum, And it was amazing because the way the aluminum would embed itself into our panel, and it worked great. So I'm gonna use the same yellow now as my next guide. So what's nice about this is now it's aluminum, but what it won't do, it won't bend arcs as well, but it is great if you're using straight lines. If you're using straight lines, you're gonna use a chalk line. And you know, there's one sitting over here on the table that I'm gonna go out of frame for a second and grab. Here we go, sorry for that. This is why the fun of doing it impromptu. But this is the chalk line, and this is how you would basically stripe. You know, if you're going to basically lay out a line on a panel. And what I typically would do is, you know, I'm going to tap some of this chalk off, and then move it over, and then stripe. And there's my line. And I don't want to have too much chalk on this because I don't want to get my tape to be not sticking. And I'll probably go back and clean this up with the alcohol afterwards. But that gives you a nice straight line. That's how you create a straight line. But this aluminum tape here doesn't want to bend and make the beautiful arcs, because you'll see it starts to wrinkle. But what's neat about it, and I'm going to kind of pull over here closer to Paul. If I lay this down in a straight line, say, let me pull this in here, and that little bit of this little buckle right here is just because of when I tried to bend it. When you burnish this in, this just sucks itself into our panel amazingly well. And you can't hardly get this off by trying to go across it with your fingers or your feet. It really is thin and grabs really well. And it's got an anti-skid surface on it. It's actually tape that they would use on for highways. So this is a pretty cool product. You have to do big arcs with it. That would work. But straight lines all day long. This is a great way to work. And then again, once you went across the panel, you would essentially just cut it and tuck it in. And now you've got two, and you just take a little, you can take a little edge of a knife or a screwdriver or a piece of wood and burnish that in real nicely. And you've got a beautiful line that now the panel can still expand and contract. So this is a great little product here. I like this one a lot. Again, we have found that this does not want to come up. It will peel up, but it does not want to come off laterally. Now, this is an interesting one. This was another type of tape. What is this for? This was, again, I think this came from Amazon, and this is a tape that they could use on roads. But because it's a little bit thicker, and it's vinyl, very sticky, anti-skid top, but what I liked about it, which was pretty cool, it did bend. It bent really well. So I'm gonna follow this line here that we did here, the yellow one. In the same process, I'm gonna pull this back, and again, keep it warm, but you can see I can really bend this thing really nicely, and it's not kinking on me. Oops. And it's sticky, you can see that. So following my line here, I'm pulling back here. It really works really well. It just kind of follows that line and bends itself down. Because it is vinyl, it's a little bit more flexible, so you can do some more things with it. I like this a lot. This is a great product. It's a little bit thicker. I don't think it's thick enough to cause a problem of trip zone at all. And then again, you would just cut it carefully on your seams. But this is a neat product here. And again, incredibly strong, and anti-skid. Now this again, lastly, this is a cloth tape. And let me get rid of some of this chalk here. This is a cloth tape. This is, if your kids were a volleyball like my daughter was, you saw this everywhere when they taped out the floors for volleyball. But this is more of a temporary, but it works. And it will follow pretty well an arc. It will bend. The worst one for bending is the metal road tape. But again, this is not particularly terrific for bending curves. You can see it's kind of wanting to buckle for me. But again, not everybody's looking for arcs. If you're looking for pickleball and certain courts, you just may be looking for straight lines. So any of these will work for straight lines. The aluminum tape for the roadside, for road markings, I think works great. The yellow one worked well. This vinyl one here, I gotta tell you, this stuff is great right here. I really like this a lot. But just some ways for you to do this at home, do it quickly. And you know, if you ever want to paint your lines, What's interesting about this, let me kind of show you something here. Let's just say, let me get rid of this. You could take a tape like this that allowed you to mark really well. Take another piece. You could take this guy here, put a piece right here. Let's just say you're going to just do that. You're doing an arc. I'm going to do this quickly, so it might not be perfect, but you get the point. Pull this around, follow this arc nice here. So there you go, and you got. So now you got this all down. What you could do at this point is, let's just say. Knife, that's great. What you could do is then pull, say you had this on either side, yellow, yellow, yellow. You could then go in, take this fella, pull this up, go all the way through, put your adhesion primer down for your paint, spray it, take these up, and there's your perfect line. So that's an easy way to, instead of trying to measure 2 inches, use a piece of tape as your actual line, tape on either side of it, and maybe you want, if you're gonna spray, you probably wanna put some paper on either side. But this is how I would do it if I was gonna do a permanent cord, if I was gonna paint one. But these are all ways that you can use tape to your advantage. Again, straight lines all day long, go for it. Arcs, be a little bit more cognizant about which ones work better. But again, we're gonna put a list on our website of all the places that these can be purchased. And hopefully this will help you figure out how to best stripe your UltraBaseSystems panels.